All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network's Going Solo Veterans Corner. I'm back again, your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, coming to you live from Northern Virginia. For those of you that have seen the show before, you know that our goal is to connect U.S. veterans across the country and allow them to share their experiences, those that have made their adjustment back to civilian life and what they're doing within their communities. We also bring on guests that work with veterans and support veterans and veterans programs. Before we get started tonight, I want to take just a moment to thank tonight's sponsor, Quest Jewelers of Fairfax, Virginia. Just contact Pete and Juan Tain of Quest Jewelers at questjewelers.com if you're looking for some fine jewelry or a nice custom special made piece. They can do it all. So visit questjewelers.com or give them a call and let them know what you're looking for. So we want to thank them for sponsoring our show. All right, so let's meet tonight's guest. A little bit different. Tonight's guest is Evan Di Silvio. Evan is a seasoned talent acquisition specialist with over 10 years of experience who works for a small company called Dark Wolf Solutions here in Northern Virginia. She's passionate about helping transitioning military personnel and translating their years of skilled and specific experience into roles that are more easily adaptable into civilian roles. So in short, she helps veterans transition from military to civilian careers. So welcome to the show, Evan.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. And, you know, this is a little different in that we're now going to have someone on that's not quite a veteran themselves, but we'll talk about it in a few minutes. I know you come from a family of veterans, but you have a passionate job dealing with veterans and assisting veterans in transitioning to civilian life and finding jobs once they leave the military. So, Evan, before we kind of start about that, let's talk about you just a little bit and find out a little bit more about you. So I understand that you went to Radford University, correct?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Yeah. When did you finish Radford, and what did you study?
I graduated in 2012, and I studied business management. So I have a bachelor's of business management, specializing in economics and entrepreneurship. Went there for 4 years, graduated, and started working right after, in my way through college. So yeah.
Oh, so it kept you pretty busy, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
I sit here and I listen to you talk about graduating from college in 2012. Yeah. And I look back on myself and say, geez, I had my first graduation in 1979. So it kind of makes me feel old here.
Sorry.
No, so you it sounds like you got a degree. Part of it was in entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So it kind of right up the alley of what you're doing in a way. But I know, in addition to some of the work that you do, I also know that you have an interest in motorcycles, right?
Yep. I ride. I have a Ducati. My dad rides with me too. He has his own bike, and we like to take long trips. Blue Ridge Parkway. One time we ended up in Boone, North Carolina. We just kind of got on our bike. Ended up there, got lost in Tennessee, and we're like turned left and ended up in Boone, North Carolina. So
got a little carried away with that one.
Oh yeah, fun stuff.
So how did your dad weather that long ride?
We definitely were walking a little awkward the next day because we were sitting on the bikes for about 12 hours. But he gets by. He was up and ready to go the next day.
So I got to ask you though, how did you get started riding motorcycles?
So my dad, he kind of got us into dirt bikes growing up and ATVs. And after college, he was still riding, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to ride too. It's fun. So I started riding actual motorcycles instead of just dirt bikes about 6 years ago. I love it. And, it's a lifestyle.
Oh, well, I can kind of identify with that because I took, I was riding bikes since I was 16, and that was a long time ago. But, I took my wife four-wheeling a few years ago, and she loved it. And then when we were on vacation a couple of times, of course, we had a golf cart to ride around the resort, and she drove that all over. So now she's already said for our retirement, a must-have is one of those four-wheeled get-arounds that you see at some of the big outdoor stores. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's got to have one now. So
Yeah, you got to make sure it's faster than all the others.
yeah, that's and, it kind of scares me because I don't want to put her behind the wheel of that thing, but I may not have much choice. Uh, but no, yeah, I mean, so riding bikes was always fun for me too. So I can understand, how you got into that. I know back when I first started riding, you didn't see that many women on bikes, but I mean, now they're all over the place.
Yeah, they're a lot. You don't see them as often as you do men, but I have some women friends that ride, so it's always nice when you can get out with them.
Well, that's good. I mean, it gives you a chance to get out and enjoy the outdoors and do something fun, right?
Oh yeah, hair
So
in the
I'll go ahead. What?
get hair in the wind.
Yeah, hair in the wind,
Mhm.
and bugs in the teeth, right?
Oh,
No, so let me before we really talk a little bit more about what you do, I want to find out a little bit more about your family because I know you come from a military family.
yes.
So can you share a little bit of that with us about the experiences of your family with the military?
Yes. So my mom's grandfather was in the military, and then my grandfather and my uncles and my cousin, they all went to West Point, were in the Army. My grandpa he was at West Point and he had to leave because the war started happening. So, he went there and then he worked his way up and, was at the Pentagon and everything like that throughout his career within the military. And my grandmother actually was a nurse in the Army too. So they're both buried at Arlington Cemetery along with my mother's grandfather and great grandfather and my two uncles. They both went to West Point as well and were in the Army. And one of my uncles now does government contracting like myself, and then my other uncle works down in Tennessee. And then my cousin who went to West Point, she was there and then was in the Army and then transitioned out. So Army family. So yeah, a lot of them were in there.
Yeah, sound like quite a few cousins and sound like quite a few West Pointers, right?
Yep. Yeah, my uncle's known for stealing the Navy goat during the Army Navy game.
Hey, that's a great thing to be known for at West Point. That's for sure. Yeah. So, you said your grandfather, when he retired, you don't mind me asking, what was his rank when he retired?
He was a colonel.
A colonel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We had a pretty good, long, productive career then.
Yes, he did. He was in there for quite a while, I think. Yeah, right up till the end, and then he transitioned out and was doing other stuff. But he was long career.
Yeah. So you said a number of them are buried in Arlington Cemetery.
My grandmother, who was an Army nurse, and my grandfather, they're buried together, and then my mom's great grandfather too.
You ever have very good opportunity to go see their grave sites?
Yep, we go every year around Christmas. Because it's when all the family can get together and go. So we go and we visit them, and we just get together and kind of stay there for the day and talk about old memories and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that's a pretty emotional occasion for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I'm sure your family will be able to watch the show if they're not watching tonight later on. So, I'm just going to say now it's a pleasure to thank you and your family for all of their service, to the nation, and I'm sure you're proud of it as well.
Yep, very proud.
Yeah, that's great. So, you come from that military family, a lot of exposure to the military background. Did that have anything to do with your career choice or your career direction in what you're doing?
Yes. So I got into recruiting when I was in college, And also when I was actually before college, I would go to volleyball Navy camp. So I always liked seeing the plebes running around, and it was cool. So between that and college, and then after college, there's, and I have a lot of friends that were in the military transitioning out. It's just kind of between my family and that, it kind of got me into doing government contracting, which is, a great place to end up after you transition out of the military. And, whatever I can do to help in my little way, that's kind of, if I can help with resumes, find jobs, what have you. I like to just, put that as my part in helping out.
Yeah, so that's kind of what got you into what you're doing now. It sounds like, it sounds like you have a pretty deep devotion to what you're doing. And I know that you've come across a lot of different people and a lot of different veterans during the time that you've been doing this. And I think you said you've been doing this for about 10 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit more about Dark Wolf Solutions and exactly what else they do?
Yes. So Dark Wolf Solutions, we're a small government contractor based out of Northern Virginia. We have a lot of different government contracts. We specialize in technical solutions and intelligence operations. So a lot of our work is cybersecurity, pen testing, DevOps, software engineering, full stack development, digital forensics, and things like that. And we also have some intelligence analysis work. So a lot of the military skill sets can translate to that. Like you got SIG analysts, geo analysts, and everything like that. That's all, people in the military are doing that all the time. So, and also with the cybersecurity and pen testing too, there's a lot of people that are transitioning out or have done that in the military during their time. So we like to, help them grow within their, cyber pen testing, whatever have you career, as far as, making sure they're on the right track with the certifications that they need to be able to work for the government contractors. Because obviously with government contractors, you have to, match a certain labor category to qualify. So we have a lot of different contracts across the DoD, intelligence community, and commercial customers. So whether you have a clearance or you don't, and you're passionate about doing technology stuff, we probably have a role for you. And, even if we don't, I do like to still help with resumes and kind of direct people in the right direction to where their career aspirations are.
Yeah, so this kind of program, I think, becomes helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate that when I was on active duty, I had an opportunity while I was an instructor to go back to school and finish grad school. And it just so happens that my master's was in HR. So I became pretty proficient at all the performance management, the hiring and resumes and things of that nature. So, I was pretty lucky in that respect. But I still remember when I was stationed at Fort Benning, we had a number of senior NCOs, friends of mine that were looking to transition out of the military. And a lot of them were caught up in MOSs that were, as you've heard them say in the Army, they're all related to hua hua.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had a lot of infantry guys, rangers, some rangers, people like that trying to come to the end of their career and transition. And we always tried to, the transition center, they had one, but it was some time ago and it was very limited.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like what you guys are doing kind of expand that. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, and there's programs that we work with through the different military branches that allow for, if someone's transitioning out, they allow for us to, work with them for 3 months to kind of get their skills up to what the contract's doing. And, hopefully at the end of those 3 months, you end up rolling on as a full-time Dark Wolf employee. So there's things like that you can do throughout, depending on what branch you're in, that allows for, at least to get your foot started and in the door. If not, I personally like to take the time to work with people in their resumes, and career goals and aspirations to kind of, like I said before, direct them in the right path and kind of figure out what they need to get to where they can, be hired by one of these companies for the types of jobs they want.
So do you consider yourself under that old term headhunter?
I consider myself a headhunter, but I am a talent acquisition specialist. I have done hiring. I'm more, I care a lot about people and where they want to be. I don't want to just do butts and seats. So and I like to take the time, especially with the veterans, because they might not have that, opportunity. All they know is what they know, and civilian language and terms are not always, it's kind of foreign to some of them because, they grew up in the military. So I like to kind of dissect what they want to do and translate that. So when the hiring manager sees their resume, they're more likely to be like, okay, let's bring them in for an interview.
Okay. All right. Well, when we come back from our commercial break, we're going to continue on to talk about that. And I'm going to ask Evan to take us into a little more detail about how she helps veterans specifically. So we'll be right back after our commercial break. All right, we're back again, and you're listening to the WGSN-DB Networks Going Solo Veterans Corner, and we're talking with our guest tonight, Evan Di Silvio. So let's get back to the conversation. And I know, Evan, that you guys do a lot of formal transition type work with veterans.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to kind of shift the conversation just a little bit and talk a little bit more about the individual veterans. Some of the ways that you work to help them, because I know one of the things that you just talked about that I remember being so important was I used to have a lot of times it was younger sergeants who would come to me because I was the old sergeant nearing the end of my career. And, they would come to me once they found out that, I had a background in doing that type of stuff, to say, hey, Sarge, how can we do our resume? How can we, I've spent most of my military career humping in the bush. I've been doing this, I've been doing that. And they really struggle in trying to transfer those military skills into something that's workable on a resume. And I know that's one of the things you do. So I was hoping you could share with us a little bit of how you do that and what it is you tell them.
Yeah, definitely. So usually when somebody's having difficulty translating their skills to, civilian terms that somebody is going to, a hiring manager or a company is going to look at, what I like to do and normally do is I sit down with this, person, I talk to them, I ask, first I ask them what they want to be doing and where they want to be within their career. And then I start to ask them questions about what they've done in the past and kind of gather up a lot of different pieces of information. And then I, look at jobs that are open just to kind of that they're interested in, to kind of show them that, this is what these, people are looking for. And based off of the conversations that we have, these are the things that you have. And then I start asking questions to kind of be like, have you ever done this, this, or that? And then they'll come out and they're like, yeah, I've done, intel analysis on this type of product and this, and that. And then all of a sudden, it's something that I understand. and a hiring manager is going to understand. So we just translate that down to, onto paper. Another thing that I like to point out that a lot of transitioning military and veterans have that, not, regular civilian might not have is, they are used to always being on time, which is, 15, 20 minutes early. They're up and at them, they wake up early. They're going to be the first ones in the office. They're going to be there wanting to get the job done, and they can work as part of a team individually. They have a lot of skills that, are that your regular civilian might not have, because, some people, younger people, they might not want to wake up as early as somebody that's been waking up at 4 a.m. for half their life. So those things I like to point out, because those things that they, should be proud in being able to, contribute to a workplace.
Well, it's part of those, how can I say, those things that's kind of honed into you. And not to say, and of course, I know that's not what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that, a veteran is better than anyone else, but there's a set of skills that's honed into them from the time they get into the military. And I still remember when I first left the Army and retired, I got to my first civilian job, and there was a retired Air Force vet there working. So right away, he and I, we kind of introduced ourselves. I was the new guy. He had been there for already about 2 years. But we linked up, started talking, and the very next day, we were supposed to have a staff meeting for our staff group that started at 9 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. Well, my shift started at work at 8 o'clock, so I was there before 8 o'clock. And he and I got to the conference room at about 5 minutes till 9. Like you're saying, it's an old military habit. Be there on time. And the old joke used to be, if you were going to have a formation for a parade, you had your first formation about 45 minutes before you actually had to be at the parade field, because every leader in between there had a formation to make sure you were there on time. So I still remember sitting in there with Bruce waiting for the meeting to start. And, at 5 minutes after, some of the folks started drifting in. And to me, I didn't understand that. That wasn't my mindset. Mm-hmm. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I mean, to this day, I'm still up at 5:30 in the morning. And, I retired. It'll be 20 years next year since I retired from the Army, and I'm still up at 5:30 in the morning. So yeah, I think there are some of those life habits that you develop while a veteran. And like I said, not to say that veterans are better than any other worker, it's just things that are beat into you.
Right. And it's also, a veteran might not have, a certain skill set that they want, that an employer wants for that job, but they do have things that they could contribute. Like they'll be there early or on time at least. And you already know they can work part of a team and together or individually. So, and in job descriptions, you'll see things like that. So that's why I like to point those out, because there are some jobs where you need to work solely by yourself or in a team, and have a certain time that you need to be in the office. So things like that, I like to point out the little details that, some people just pass by, that could really help out somebody transitioning or that was in the military.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you talk about those intangibles, because to be honest with you, when I first got hired by the federal government after I retired, the first job I got into, the lady that hired me, she was a deputy director, and she told me, quite frankly, she said, "I saw your resume." She said, "I saw that you were a recent retired career military guy." She said, "I know how veterans are." She said, "I've worked with plenty of them." She said, "I saw that you finished your career as a brigade operations NCO," which means, she said, you manage training budgets. She said you wrote SOPs and policies for the office. So she actually already knew that translation. So, I was kind of lucky in that I had someone who hired me that could equate a lot of those skills that you get in the military that may not necessarily, transition or translate directly over into that job. So that was kind of my experience too, and I was pretty fortunate. The other thing she told me was, she said, I saw you had finished graduate school. So she said that told me you could write. So
Exactly.
you're right. There are a lot of intangibles that you don't think about that I think our veterans tend to miss when they look at their resumes. Do you ever run into it where the leadership aspect really becomes valuable?
Yeah, there are a lot of different roles where, having a leadership capability is important. But, there's also that part where while you're a leader, you're also working as part of a team.
Yeah.
A lot of employers like to see that you could do both at the same time. So that's been one that's common pretty much across the board. And also willingness to learn, if you can get on the phone with somebody, the willingness to learn and grow. And you're not just set in like one little way where you just want to do one thing. As long as you show, let the person who you're talking to know that, you're open. This is what you prefer. This is what you want to do. But, you are open to learning and to new experiences. That usually goes a long way too.
So I got to ask you, have you ever run into one of those clients or veterans who seem to think, well, I retired at the top of my career. So when I transition over into a military job, I should be able to transition right over at the top. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I see that a lot. I also see it on the other end of the spectrum where they're like, well, I just transit, I see it more on the other end but I do see it where it's like, okay, well, your military experience still counts. And I know you're at the top of, where you were there, but this is where you fit within this government leader category. So you kind of have to, and it also goes with retired agency people from the intelligence community and all. You got to really set the expectations and kind of explain why that this is why they're going to be where they're at, transitioning out or out of the military.
So you try to provide that explanation, and that, how can I say, that career ladder when they transfer over, because I saw it too. I saw a lot of veterans who really thought they should be able to start out higher than what they did. Um, and I know when I retired, I was one of those ones that looked and says, well, I'm retired. I'm happy. I just want to go start somewhere to work to start my civilian career. But I was very fortunate. But I did see some guys as I was retiring from the Army that had that mindset. So it's good that you don't see that as often anymore. Maybe that's a little more of the old group that came out when I came out a long time ago. But I imagine there's a difference between you helping the transitioning of a career military person as opposed to one of the younger folks who maybe only spent an enlistment or so in, and are now making that change. How does that differ?
So usually somebody that's been in a long time, like a career military person, it's a little bit more difficult to find them a role unless the specific client we have is looking for somebody that's had like 25 years in the Air Force doing a certain thing. People that have only been in for a few years, it's depending on what skills they have, will really determine on, where we can put them. I do know that a lot of people that only have about 6 to 7 years, sometimes, if they have a degree and they only have 6 to 7 years of experience, they're not as confident when they're transitioning into the civilian world. So what I like to, tell these people is like, listen, you do have a degree, you do have these years of experience, and these are the things you can do. Like, don't sell yourself short. So that's kind of where those two, career long versus just 6 years kind of are different. There are some that have only been in for 6 years that they come out and they're like, I've done this, and I need to be at a senior level role. So, but they don't know because they haven't been in the civilian world. So as long as they're okay with somebody like me being blunt, like, listen, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Then it's, yeah, after explaining it, and we're usually able to find them something.
Well, to be quite honest with you, I think sometimes that's what they need to hear, whether they like it or not. And if
Mhm.
they're a veteran, they're used to hearing that type of stuff, or at least they should be. So, I'm sure, your point of view is it's better to be honest with them up front in the long run and set the expectations at the proper level as you move forward.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I know that you do a lot of work with your company,
Mhm.
but I also know that you also try to help veterans individually.
Yes.
Um, can you share just a little bit about that with us?
Yes. So I'm open to, and I'm, resume writing and helping with that and helping find a career that, come to me. I'm here to help. What I like to do is, what I was explaining earlier, for somebody that doesn't really know, or didn't get the proper training or help with writing their resume as they're transitioning, which I've seen a lot. I really do like to help to, kind of get a solid base resume for them. And I talk about what they want to do, what they've done, and what type of job they want. I'll throw out their example for like a penetration tester, which Dark Wolf hires a lot of penetration testers. This is just an example for any person that's, transitioning out of the military. If you want to, go in that career field, but you have zero experience doing that, what I'll do is I'll, sit down with you, talk to you about, these are the skills you currently have, but these are what you need to get your foot in the door somewhere. So I will help you research, conferences to go to, things to sign up for, so where you can kind of start networking to, talk to people in their, how they got their foot in the door to places, and the types of certifications you need that are, that companies see and want to see people that they want to bring on have, so we can, kind of figure out a plan on how to get you, certified, and kind of the base skill set that you need to get your foot in the door somewhere. And then once we map out that plan, I then start, looking at jobs that you might be able to start doing, and so you can transition to the job that you want to do within that company or a different company. So I kind of sit down. It takes about an hour or so, depending on what you want to do. If you don't know what you want to do, I can throw out tons of ideas based off the skills that you have. So that's always an option too. The longest part usually is figuring out what you need to get your foot in the door somewhere. The resume writing, if you're motivated and you're willing to do the edits I suggest, and work with me and send it back, from there it's smooth. So yeah, that's what I usually like to do. And not every person I help is successful, because some people change their mind, they end up not wanting to do what we talked about, and that's fine. Just figure out a different way to get your foot in the door somewhere else, or you change your career aspirations, and we just work it that way.
Yeah. So if someone, I know you have a LinkedIn account,
Mhm.
if someone wanted to get a hold of you for that assistance you provide, can they reach you through your LinkedIn account?
Yes, you can reach me through my LinkedIn account, and my email should be at the bottom. If not, I will make sure it's there before the end of the show. And you can email me or send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day, all day long. So you'll be able to find me there.
Okay. Well, yeah, it really sounds like you've kind of found your niche, because you do sound like you're really passionate about what you're doing. And I
Mhm.
know with your family's background, you know, you're trying to do your part to, I guess, help veterans as your way of serving, beyond what your family is doing. And I think that's really great. I mean, it's not everyone's not everyone's made to spend time in the military, and you don't have to spend time in the military to help other people or even help veterans for that matter. So I
Right.
think it's really commendable what you're doing. So I got to ask you before we wrap up though, can you share with us an experience that you've had doing this job that was either kind of unusual or really kind of threw you for a loop, I guess you could say? Something that really caught you by surprise?
Well, with what I do, there's at this point nothing will surprise me. There's um, a lot of different things that can happen, and as somebody that talks to people on a daily basis, you do hear a lot of stories. One I can remember is hiring somebody down in Georgia, actually near Fort Benning. We had to have people that needed to go on the base. And I had this guy who had recently gotten divorced, and he was a veteran, had no money, and he really needed help to get a job. So I listened to this guy for about 2 hours, just kind of talk. And by the end of the conversation, we were able to, figure out everything we needed to put on his resume and this was 8 years ago, put on his resume to get him in for this job. So we got him submitted. A week later, he was hired, and till this day, he still calls me, talks to me. And so things like that. The reason it threw me for surprise is because usually, yeah, you could talk to somebody for 2 hours, but are you really going to remember them? Because they just, you just talk to them for 2 hours and then you got a job. And from there on out, you're talking to the people on your team. So the reason it surprised me was because he remembered me. He, was like, thank you so much for helping me get my feet back up and everything like that. And all I did was help him write his resume and submitted him to the hiring manager. So things like that go a long way for me.
Well, I think something like that is really, that definitely makes an impression on him or those people that you're helping. So I can understand that. It definitely sounds like that you made a definite impression in his life by the services that you are providing. So I congratulate you for the work that you're doing. I have to say, though, I want to tell the audience, if you're interested in finding out what Evan does, there's her LinkedIn information at the bottom of the screen. You can find her there, get in touch with her, talk with her, and find out what she may be able to do to help you. Whether it's through herself or through her company, Dark Wolf Solutions. There may be something there that they can help you with. So, Evan, I'm sure you're very open to people contacting you.
Yes, I am. And if you see a job on darkwolfsolutions.com, there's our contact infos on there. You can email us there too. I will be replying to whichever you prefer to contact us. And if you see any jobs on the website that you're interested in and want help writing your resume, I can help with that as well. And yeah, whatever you need, just reach out and I'm here.
All right. Well, Evan, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show and sharing your information and your service to the veterans, sharing what you and your company are trying to do. And I'm sure that this will be definitely some useful information for them. And hopefully we'll have some folks reach out to you to see what kind of assistance you can provide. So thank you for being on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me, Paul.
All right. So that wraps up another show for tonight. Just a reminder here for those of you veterans out there, you see at the bottom of the screen, it talks about no veteran should be without a place to call home. We have so many homeless veterans in the country, and an average of 20 veterans a day commit suicide. So there are plenty of them out there that need help and need assistance. If you're out there and you happen to see us here, you see the number at the screen, 877-424-3838. Please call and get some help. Or if you know someone who needs some help, a veteran who's in need, who needs a place to stay, a place to live, or maybe just a hand up to get started, please make the call. The number is across the screen because, again, no veteran should be without a place to call home, not after service to their country. So please take note and call the number. Thank you for listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network and the Going Solo Veterans Corner. We strive to connect veterans, bringing you guests with helpful information, which we hope will keep you and your families better informed. Veterans, as always, we want to thank you for your service, and we hope that you are inspired to live your best life. I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and I would like you to invite you to visit my site, theliteraryvet.net, my author site, and the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network at goingsolomedia.com for more information. So thank you and good night until next show.